This is the last session. I'd like to introduce Ray Soto. He's Director of Emerging Technologies from USA Today. He is going to be talking about the future of interactive storytelling. I would like everybody to give him a round of applause as he comes up. We'll have 5 minutes at the end for questions down there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. First and foremost, I really appreciate all of you attending this session while there's a happy hour that's going on outside. So I will try to make this as intoxicating as a nice glass of red wine. But really, what I hope to do is to provide some insights into our editorial workflows when it comes to telling stories through emerging technology, specifically virtual reality, augmented reality, and what might be coming up next. I just realized I'm still wearing my mask. But I wanted to kick off by being honest. The journalism industry is very challenging. You know, not many people think of this particular industry, and especially USA Today, as being innovative, but that's further from the truth. So I wanted to ask all of you a question, what comes next? It's my team's responsibility to figure out what comes after traditional storytelling methods, from a long-form story on a web page to a mobile device, and yes, even some of the work that we're doing in AR, which is native app driven, but what does come next? And we do see a future that extends beyond the screen. But who are we? So I lead a very small team of passionate developers. We're all former video game artists and devs. And for us, while we're not reporters and we work within the news division, we are creative storytellers. We're really passionate about the work that we do. We consider ourselves user-focused innovators, passionate storytellers, and tech accelerators. And for those three, what we do is we work very closely with different markets and different newsrooms across the US. We've got close to 300 properties across the US, so we can tell stories from local to national, and ultimately tell stories that resonate with these small communities. But for us, it's all about creating impact. So what does that mean? Ultimately, what we want to do is we want to create these stories that resonate with people who are engaging with our content. We want to make sure that we provide value. Ultimately, we want to make sure that we are respecting the time that they're giving us to, whether it's download the app, engage with our content, share, and possibly even subscribe. But for us, the way that we've recognized that we are creating impact are by these 4 pillars that we use for every project we approach. We want to ensure that we have strong visuals, we have solid interactivity, we've got sound, and we have a consistent pacing that provides a seamless user experience. But with all of those, how do we create those and leverage those pillars as applied to storytelling? And for us, it's all about our interactive foundation. As I mentioned before, we are former video game developers. So for us, as we are evaluating the landscape of what might be available to us, we want to ensure that we can support quite a few different type of interactive schemes, visualizations, from 3D models, videos, images, and audio. So it's a well-rounded experience. But ultimately, it really comes down to the very last two, and that's accessibility. So what we want to do is we want to ensure that the experiences are available within the USA Today app and all of our local market apps seamlessly. So what we've done is we've leveraged Unity and built a framework and integrated them within the USA Today app. And what that does for us is it allows us to ensure that we no longer have to focus on the how, and we can focus on the story itself. So with this toolbox of opportunities for us, we ensure that we can provide that value, that seamless user experience, that interactive that folks can come in, explore, and discover story for themselves. And ultimately, we hope that they come back for not just a particular story that they might have come across, but also engage with all of our content. And that even extends beyond AR to include our traditional reporting. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you some of the examples that we've been working on over the past few years. And some of these are going to be stories that folks might not consider as a great opportunity for augmented reality. But again, with our approach to telling these stories, I hope that you understand how we're leveraging them and how we're trying to continue to push ahead and ultimately turn our audiences from traditional news consumers into tech-savvy readers. And this first project I'm going to share with you is 1619.
Our feet blistered and bleeding, we finally arrive at the port of Luanda and gaze upon a beast sitting in the sea. It is the largest ship we have ever seen, and we marvel at the sight. No sooner than we feel the breeze upon our faces do they grab us.
1619, The Will to Survive, was a part of a larger package that we were working with our investigative team and our feature story team. And when they were asking me what we could do as far as being able to support and create a component, I immediately thought of we should create a museum-like experience that folks can step into the bow of the ship that brought the first enslaved Africans to Virginia. And most folks might not think that that could be a good opportunity, but for us, we were also wanting to ensure that we were respectful and work very closely with our reporters so that we are telling the story in a way that provides value and really provides value and at the same time ensures that we are treating everything respectfully. And we worked very closely with the Hampton History Museum, ship experts, the African American Museum in DC. So we wanted to ensure that we were very authentic, that we were respectful, and we worked very, very closely with our ERGs to ensure that we were telling the story in a way that provided impact, but at the same time had folks feeling as if they were learning about something in this immersive museum-like experience. And additionally, we work very closely with our investigations team, and this next project I'm going to show you is called Show of Force.
This is Azizabad, Afghanistan, population 1,500. On August 22, 2008, this was the site of an American ground operation and airstrike. The target, a Taliban commander. Military officials would tout the mission as a major success. It wasn't. The Taliban commander escaped, and the operation turned out to be one of the deadliest civilian casualty events of the Afghan war. This is a story of lies, spies, and a series of military intelligence failures that ended in tragedy. A key player in it all is a company called G4S, the largest private security employer in the world.
Show of Force was a really interesting project for us. When Brett Murphy, the lead investigator on this particular story, had just come back from Afghanistan, who had embedded himself within the village to learn more about what had happened in Azizabad. And as we were working with him, we were going through hundreds of photos, very powerful photos, videos. We were sifting through audio testimony, we were through documentation. What we wanted to do is we wanted to provide an experience that folks can get a better understanding of how everything unfolded, what had happened, and ultimately being able to guide them into the longer form storytelling experience itself. So again, leveraging augmented reality in different ways, but using its strength to tell the story and provide that sense of learning. But we also have to talk about the pandemic. And for us, there should be video here. I don't know if it's going to play, but regardless. So the pandemic had hit. January of last year, we were starting to work with Olympic athletes to start building out experiences for what we were hoping were going to be the Summer Olympics in 2020. We started to scale things back as news started to roll out that we might have to shift to a remote working kind of framework. And for me, I like to plan out our editorial calendar months ahead, and I had our entire 2020 planned. And ultimately, what ended up happening is I'd have to make changes. On a Monday, I found out, okay, we're probably not going to work on the second half of the year, so I had to remove 4 or 5 projects. Then it became, hey, we might actually be able to go back into the office and start working with some of our partners until July, so I scaled it back even more. And ultimately, I had to scrap everything within about 3 days. And what we ended up doing is we ended up creating a series of interactives that resonated with folks and were very timely and they were top of mind. And we're doing COVID-related experiences that leveraging AR. And the first one, so the video is not playing, but that's okay. We ended up creating a augmented reality minigame, a quiz-like experience that leveraged the information that we had from the CDC to guide people to understand what does flattening the curve mean? What is social distancing? And what we did was we presented 5 situations for users to essentially a multiple choice, as far as how to approach if you had to go to the grocery store, if you had to visit, let's say, a neighbor, masking up. And we would do a risk assessment and provide the information, again, guided by the CDC, and would actually link to the CDC as well. And what was very interesting for us was the engagement that we saw. And it was very surprising when you consider that we conceptualized the project on a Monday. We ended up building this over several days, working with our reporters, and then publishing it on a Friday. And did very, very well for us when, a total of 4.3 million seconds of engagement, 7.6 million impressions, and a very strong total views of 164,000. And for us, when it comes to this type of content, is phenomenal engagement. And again, very unexpected, but we're creating that content that resonated with people at the right time. Last year, though, it was surprising. We ended up creating 8 experiences total, and for us, it's the average engagement time that really surprised us, just over 2 minutes. And when you consider going into an app, especially news readers, they're quickly scanning through and kind of scrubbing, just reading headlines. And if they find a piece that they're interested in, they'll engage with that, and maybe it's page depth, like page depth. We're lucky if we can get them below the fold. But for an augmented reality experience, this engagement time is telling us that folks are staying with it. And interestingly for us, when you consider that USA Today as a brand definitely does skew a little bit older, but we're turning our demographic into tech-savvy users who understands augmented reality, and we're also attracting a much younger audience to our platform to tell these stories that resonate with them. But I also have to talk about other breaking news stories that we ended up creating. Earlier this year, I think everybody remembers the January 6th siege on the US Capitol. And as we were watching the event unfold live, virtually, of course, we started to think about how can we tell this story, because we were seeing so many images coming out throughout the day that nobody really had a sense as far as where they were happening, and we understood that through our platform and through augmented reality, we can contextualize the experience. So we ended up building this within 8 hours, so near breaking news coverage in AR, working very closely with our photographers, with our reporters to ensure accuracy, and being able to publish this just the following day. And interestingly, this is still our strongest engaged with project of this year so far. So again, resonating with people, top of mind, near breaking news, and being able to actually not focus on the code, but the story itself, and being able to get this as seamlessly as possible to our users. But something more lighthearted. Back in January, I would say, a colleague of ours who's actually here in the crowd, we ended up working with the Smithsonian Channel to build out an interactive that was informing users of the Mars Perseverance rover and its mission. And through our collaboration, we ended up building a fairly robust story that would visualize and let users to learn more about the hardware, being able to interact. It was guided by our lead space reporter, and it was a fun experience that was kind of just at the right time. When you consider with the COVID side of things and the engagement that we're seeing, something that was a bit more lighthearted, I think folks were really ready for this. And interestingly, what we also did is, USA Today Network is a network of local news markets, and from local to national. So we were able to distribute content to several of our native apps. So essentially, we've got probably the largest network of augmented reality capable apps, and at the same time, an augmented reality audience that can consume this content across several markets. And for us, we ended up distributing to most of the South and USA Today, and it did very, very well for us, so it was also encouraging. And again, it just continues to kind of show that entire path that we had from early experimentation to what we saw in 2020 with folks engaging with the content, and even now with more diverse stories, which could include the January 6th experience, and again, some of the Mars and fun space-related content that resonates with them as well. But what else we've noticed is an opportunity for us to leverage user testing to ensure that our audience can seamlessly engage with the content. And early on, what you see to the left here is what we first did and released in 2018. We were kind of figuring out what augmented reality is, but our onboarding sequence was very, very crude. So when we look at the data, we would see high impression rates, and let's say 1 million, and we'd see a steep, steep drop, kind of like that engagement cliff. We were very lucky if we've got 5% of those folks who actually tapped on the card to fire it up to actually stay within the experience. And those who did stayed, which was fantastic. But for us, we recognized that we had to rethink the onboarding sequence, especially when you consider having to ask our audience to accept camera permissions. And for folks who might not be too familiar with augmented reality, it's a large ask. And we want to make sure that they can trust not only us, but at the same time, that the technology isn't going to start recording and steal some of their private spaces. But what we see on to the right here is actually what we ended up creating. So through user testing, we re-envisioned how we do the onboarding sequence. It was much more conversational. We worked closely with our product design team, and we ended up kind of rethinking the entire thing to ensure that folks can understand what it is, they're excited to try it, and they give us the permissions. And interestingly, we integrated this new update within our premium sports product that we just launched 2 months ago called USA Today Sports Plus. And through the onboarding sequence, what we've seen here is very consistent from impressions to actual engagement, than actually staying within the entire experience. So Sports Plus came out September 7th, and so far over the past just over 2 months, average engagement time per user, it's an astounding over 5 minutes long. And for us, that's telling us that is a result of not just the onboarding sequence that we redesigned, but it's also resonating. And I know I keep saying those words throughout this experience, but for us, knowing that this demographic, the diehard sports fan, is engaged with this content, they understand augmented reality, and they're allowing us to present and deliver these stories to them. But throughout the year, what have we learned? So we've learned 3 things. We provide value, we're reaching a broad audience, and we drive repeat visits. And for us, those are the 3 key things as we continue to evolve. And with some of these spikes that you see here, for us, this is telling us a story that we're heading in the right direction. And granted that we've been creating this content for 3 years, we want to ensure that we're continuing to grow. So ultimately, what is our advice to you? It's very, very important to build a cross-divisional team. None of this could be possible if it was just our core team of former video game developers. We want to ensure that we're working with reporters, videographers, photographers, and essentially a well-rounded team that can provide those diverse perspectives, but ultimately tell these stories in a way that is unique and as powerful as possible when you consider we're asking someone to engage and consume this content. We have to be transparent. We have to update often. For us, what that means is ensuring that we have a close working relationship with our product team to ensure that we are able to update our Unity-based AR framework and ensure that we are providing useful updates, and at the same time that we're not impacting and causing issues as part of their workflows. Have to understand the story. I feel like that isn't something that should be a surprise to anyone, but for everything that we work on, we embed ourselves with our reporters and with our newsrooms to tell these stories. From 1619, we were working closely with our reporters who flew out to Angola in Africa and captured content for us from audio that we would embed within the experience, and that includes water on the beach, birds, a lot of that type of stuff that we want to pull into there, so there's that sense of authenticity and also being able to work with them. So it's very important to ensure that we are embedding ourselves, that we're working with the right partners to tell these stories. Never hesitate to explore. We don't have everything figured out, and that's one of the things that we hope to continue to push forward. For us, we're constantly learning. We are building relationships with folks like you. We're understanding what might be possible coming up in the future. So we have to ensure that we are comfortable with failing and at the same time providing ourselves that flexibility to try something that we might not have tried before. And the last one to me is very, very important. You have to evolve with the technology and with your audience. This one here, as I mentioned, is the most important one. And when you look at from our user testing exercise for the onboarding sequence from where we were and where we're going, to even the types of stories that we're telling. We started off fairly big with large, robust interactives that incorporated videos, images, and audio interactions, but ultimately the experience was far too long. So we were not meeting our readers where they were at. We had to introduce augmented reality, had to introduce the technology to them so they understood what it is and they find value in it, and that we can continue to kind of guide them and grow. But granted, our audience will only grow as much as we give them, so we have to ensure that we're constantly pushing ahead and trying to leverage something new that we can get with them and meet their expectations as well. So I want to go back to the question that I asked before, what comes next? At USA Today, we are very excited about the direction of this technology, and we do believe that it will extend beyond the screen. Everything that we've been doing now as it relates to storytelling can be applied to where developing a product. So essentially, how will USA Today be represented in a spatial space that extends beyond the screen? Storytelling, we feel like we've got a really good understanding from that, but we have to continue to push ahead. We have to continue to evolve. So to go back, what does come next? The future of journalism is immersive, interactive, and 3D. This is very, very important to us, and I want all of you to consider that you might not consider journalism as something that is a fit for this space, but it perfectly makes sense. We are passionate storytellers. We have great stories, and leveraging these technologies and these formats in a way that folks can stand within and interact, I think is very, very powerful. Thank you. So I don't know if there are any questions. I see someone at the mic there.
Yeah, I don't know if this thing is on, but I can also enunciate if needed. So I kind of had 2 questions. One's a little shorter than the other, but the first question is, the Unity framework that you talked about earlier, is that available to third-party devs, or is it just internal to your team?
So what we ended up doing is leveraging the Unity platform and creating a small framework. Other folks can do it. It's just something that we custom created and exported that can be embedded within the overall app. So it's nothing proprietary. We just ended up creating something that would fit the needs that we have that would work seamlessly with our product.
Okay, awesome. I was wondering because I was hoping I could use it. The other question is, you talked about the working on the onboarding experience in order to help increase the overall engagement.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you don't mind kind of giving examples of some of the things you guys did, or even through your user testing that you found that little tricks and stuff that helped with that problem.
Yeah, what was really interesting for us through user testing is hearing our testers provide feedback. I think the very first thing we would ask them is, what is augmented reality? And I would estimate somewhere around 75% had no idea what it was. They already engage with the content. They understand what filters are, Snapchat, Instagram, on from there, but they don't know that's augmented reality. So early on, when we started to promote our content within the USA Today app, we would label it as augmented reality. But as soon as we changed it to interactive story, engagement spiked. So there's still kind of that, I don't want to call it a learning curve, but that is one of the things that we want to ensure that we guide folks into. We don't want to provide too much technical jargon. We want to get that out of the way, and we just want to be able to tell the story and kind of guide them and introduce them to this technology through the stories that we tell. So that would be one of them. The other one is, for the type of stories that we tell, being able to anchor, let's say, an object within someone's room, the feedback that they were giving us is they didn't have an understanding as far as, well, where am I supposed to place something? And if they did, they didn't understand it was to scale, smaller. So we had to re-envision the way that we would introduce and reference these stories, like kind of like the asset bundles, essentially, these Unity packages, to say, this is a room scale experience, this is a tabletop experience, because essentially there were so many folks who were providing us feedback to say, I don't see it, but ultimately they ended up placing it far away from them, or it was too large or too small. So I'd say those are the two biggest ones for us.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Damien. I'm an augmented reality creator, and I'm a former journalist. So I have a lot of journalist friends who either are videographers and audio in different spaces that are interested in kind of working in the space and kind of creating a studio. You talked about like the cross-divisional aspect of the work. Can you talk about what might have been like the most difficult for folks who may not even been in the AR space but were in the storytelling space?
That is
bringing that together?
That's a great question. Early on, it's been one of those things where I was advocating for newsrooms to work with our team to try something different. And early on, folks didn't understand exactly what it is that we were proposing. Over the course of about 2 years, they have a better understanding of these technologies, and now they're reaching out to us, and I have to turn them away. I mean, since I've been at the conference, I got 2 messages from 2 different newsrooms saying, hey, we've got an AR project. It's like, unfortunately, we don't have the bandwidth to support, but maybe we can plan ahead. So I think the early challenge is not just the advocacy side, but sharing examples, showing them the potential, and letting them know that we are there to work with you to tell the story in a way that is perfect within this platform. So there are small steps. I would definitely recommend sharing a few examples. Download the USA Today app, share with them. But what's also encouraging for me when I look at all of our reporters across the network, the fact that they are thinking about augmented reality as part of their kind of content strategy is exciting. But that's only a result of what we've been seeing out there. There's so many conversations around augmented reality, virtual reality, that folks are interested, they're engaging with it, and they're starting to think differently. They're starting to think, the last slide, the future of journalism is immersive in 3D. They're starting to think in 3D now, which is really encouraging. So there are a few things that you could do. I would say it's not reinvent the wheel, but think spatially, think about stepping into a story or delivering a story to someone within their environment. And I think you'll find that might be a fairly seamless transition to start thinking in that space and experimenting on from there.
And just one follow-up, just thinking about that dynamic, what do you think has been the most natural? Like for me as a journalist, when I saw different aspects of AR, it makes sense because you can write a 2,000-word story and have like amazing content on the side that doesn't really fit, and this allows for some of that. Is there anything that kind of like between the workers, between the artists, that made it just kind of it was really easy, the collaboration?
Oh yeah, the perfect example that I can give is the first AR project that we had worked on that was distributed in USA Today, and we had a podcast team that was supporting a series called The City, and the lead editor that was working on the project had reached out to me. It's like, hey, I'm interested in augmented reality. I've got this podcast series. Is there anything that we can do? And she had sent me the trailer, and it was about a minute long. And essentially, it was a story about a community in South Chicago in which this massive illegal dump was placed right in the middle, right across the street from an elementary school, next to businesses, cracked foundations, black mold, high asthma rates and all from there. But the reason I'm bringing this up is, as I was listening to that segment, there was a line from one of the residents who was talking about the size of this dump. It was over 6 stories tall. It towered over all of the homes and the businesses and the schools in that area. So when I went back to her, I said, this right here is what we can do in AR, so folks understand the relationship that this dump was across the street. They could hear from these folks. And that right there, as soon as you kind of plant that seed, it starts to expand. Like, oh, we've got all these photographs. We can show, where this is in relation to the dump. We can show how powerful it is that, there's an elementary school right across the street from this dump. So I think just planting that small seed of providing that sense of scale is something that can start to shift their thinking when it comes to immersive storytelling, especially when it comes to that sense of immersion and that 3D landscape that you can explore.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I think we're good. Thank you.